The photos in this album are the collection of old pictures, the majority coming from the former Mildred McNish Robinson. Mildred was very organized, and most notations on photos are credited to her. The former Margaret McNish Zeisman left invaluable historical documents used in creating the narration. I want to acknowledge the invaluable help of Andrew and Karen McNish, John McNish, Adam and Alison McNish, and Nancy McNish Chantrain in providing historical details to create the simplified family trees, identifying the persons in photos as well as stories from their lives. I will start the album with a description of simplified family trees. The McNish family tree. Aunt Margaret and her husband Ben Zeisman did a lot of research and provided invaluable documents and history tracing the ancestry to the original immigrant from Scotland, George McNish. George was born in 1792 and married Jane Jean Ramsay, born in 1791. They were Highland Scots, relocated to Canada by the British during what was known as the Highland clearances. They came with 5 children in 1821, with the promise of receiving 100 acres of land. After a sailing trip of 4.5 weeks, they landed in Montreal and traveled to Prescott. Their youngest child, Christian, died during the trip and was buried at sea. They had another 5 children in Canada. James McNish, born in 1824, settled in Lynn and married Caroline Fulford. James and Caroline had 9 children. Their second child was William Henry, born in 1858, and he married Ellen Louisa Booth. They had 5 children: William Edward, Hiram Harris, Catherine Lillian, Mabel Louisa, and Ruth Elizabeth. Hiram Harris married Ellen Mary Nutley, and they had 3 children: Philip Harris, Margaret Alice, and Mildred Louisa. We will continue in the next chart. Hiram Harris McNish and Ellen Mary Nutley had 3 children: Philip, who married Catherine May Rice, Margaret, who married Benjamin Zeisman and adopted a child, and Mildred, who married Harold Robinson, did not have children. Philip and May had 5 children: Edward, who married 3 times, Nancy married Pierre Chantrain, Andrew married twice, John married Vera Hargrave, and Norman married Ellen Hargrave. They all had children. The photos in the album focus mainly on people in the boxes with a white background. We make a brief diversion for the ancestry of Ellen Mary Nutley. Edwin Nutley was born in 1856. We do not have a record of his wife, but we believe they had 4 or 5 children. Ellen Mary, born in 1888, married Hiram Harris McNish. During the First World War, he had been wounded at the front, and his nurse in England was Ellen Nutley. They were married in England in 1916 before he returned to the front. Hiram brought Ellen back to Canada after the war with Philip, and they had 2 more children, Margaret and Mildred. The photos in the album focus mainly on the boxes with a white background. The Rice family tree. We start with Nancy's parents, Catherine May Rice, who married Philip Harris McNish. May had 2 sisters and a brother, but we are not sure of the order of their birth. Their parents were E.Leroy Rice and Etta Henderson. We have no data on their dates of birth or death, siblings or their parents. Leroy Rice was a minister of the church in Barre, Vermont, USA. The Buckinghamshire, the ship which likely brought George McNish, his wife Jane Jean Ramsay, and his first 5 children to Canada in 1821. The British had chartered 4 ships, each with a capacity of 400 to 500 people, to carry the evicted Highland Scots, provided with a land grant, to Lanark County in Canada. This photocopy was in Aunt Margaret's papers. We speculate that it was a portrait of James McNish after he was married to Caroline Fulford. The inscription on the frame is not easily readable, but it is believed to be Dukelows, Brockville, Ontario. Caroline Fulford, around 1905, wife of James McNish. This group picture appears to be family related to Caroline Fulford. There are names recorded below the picture, but they have been edited over the years, and there are contradictions between what appears to be the original writing and the pencil writing. Our best guess, after multiple reviews, starting on the left from Caroline Fulford, George and his wife, Martha, Harris, Charles or James, Tom, Maud or Emma, Joe Macpherson, Mary Caroline, and sitting Mabel, Ursula, Janet, Catherine, Ruth, Maud or Alice, and Bessie. Edwin Philip Nutley in 1908. And with his daughter Ellen Mary in 1908. Edwin Philip Nutley died relatively young at 52 in 1908. This is a group picture of the Nutley family dating to 1911, prior to Hiram meeting Ellen Mary during the war. We recognize Mrs. Nutley, mother of Ellen Mary. Ellen Mary could be the seated person, second from the right, and the soldier in uniform could be Horace. Hiram Harris McNish enlisted at the start of the war. He was gassed and wounded. His nurse back in England was Ellen Nutley. He returned to the war after his marriage to Ellen and served in Belgium and France in 1917 and again early 1919. Ellen Mary Nutley and Hiram Harris McNish were married on April 26, 1916 in the Holy Trinity Church in Penton, Mewsey, Andover. Ellen and Harris's first child, Philip, was born while Harris was back at the war on April 11, 1918. In January 1919, Nell sailed to Canada with Philip, arriving in St. John, New Brunswick on January 19th. She sailed on the Canadian Pacific Railway liner RMS Metagama, Royal Mail ship. Launched in 1915 for the purpose of carrying troops, they traveled to Elm Grove Farm by train, and Harris came back a few months later and was decommissioned in Ottawa in May 1919. The photo is identified as William and Louisa 1919. Thank you to John to help with identification. William Henry and Louisa with Philip on her knees, and standing from the left, Ellen Mary, William, Bill, Mabel, Catherine, and Hiram Harris. on a hay wagon, Harris, Gwen Nutley, one of Helen's sister, and young Philip. In 1920, and Philip's first sister, Margaret, is born. The family in the summer of 1921: Nell, Margaret, Philip, and Harris. Philip and Margaret were easy to locate and recognize. We believe the adults are correctly identified: Margaret Booth, Nell, Louisa Booth, McNish, Gladys Booth, and Louis Booth Standing. The last person is not identified. (1924) and a first photo with Mildred and her two siblings. Nell and her three children. (1924) John suggested that this photo was likely taken by the river at the shipments. We cannot recognize anyone. Nell and her children in a horse-drawn buggy. In the blow-up picture from the left, Nell, Mildred, Margaret, and Philip. The photo was identified as New Car 1929, with no names recorded. Thanks to John for identifying the people and also the car, a 1929 Model A Ford. From the left, Hiram, known as Harris, his father and mother, William Henry and Louisa, and their other four children, William, known as Willie. In the rumble seat, Mabel, Catherine, known as Kate, and Ruth. We do not know who owned the car. 1929 winter. The stone house is in the background, but we can only recognize the children, Mildred, Philip, and Margaret. Harris was very involved with crop improvement with the Campville Agricultural College. Margaret, Philip, and Mildred with their dog Dash. As war broke out, Margaret enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force, the RCAF, in 1940. On July 22, 1944, Philip Harris McNish married Catherine May Rice at Four Winds on Wolfe Island. The envelope for the wedding invitation sent to Mildred at Elm Grove Farm, it was redirected to Ottawa. The wedding party: Etta Rice, E.Leroy Rice, May and Philip, Nell Harris. We do not know the name of the flower girl. (1944) winter: Dash, Mildred, Nell, Margaret, and Aunt Elsie, one of Nell's sisters. (1947) Edward and Philip, Mildred, Margaret, and May Standing. (1951) May with her first three children, Edward, Andrew, and Nancy. (1951) Nell is in Ottawa to try to see the Queen during a visit to Canada. They did see the royal barge taking the Queen from the Britannia to shore. Harold, Mildred's husband, with Nell and Harris. 1956, Harris, Nell, cousin Diane from England, and another person not recognized. Christmas 1956. At the front, Edward, Nancy, Andrew and John. Standing behind, Philip, Margaret, Harris, Nell and May. The same group with Margaret missing. Nancy is holding tight with a doll that Margaret gave her for Christmas. At the back, Nell, Nancy, Edward, May and John. In front, Mildred and Andrew. (1960) Benjamin Zeisman, Ben, and Margaret McNish. Unloading clay tiles for tiling a field. A neighbor, Leslie Bryan, Norman, John and Andrew. The McNish Award was created in 1957 and retired in 1974, last given to Philip McNish for outstanding soil and crop improvements. 1975, Norman graduates from high school at TISS, Thousand Island Secondary School. Christmas in 1988 in Lynn. Back row, Adam, Matt, Tammy and Jamie. The front row, Jennifer, Michael and Kirk. Margaret in Mildred's condo in Victoria. An aerial view of Elm Grove's farm around 1990. On the back row, Pierre, Peter, Norman, Andrew, Matt, John, Adam. Middle row, Jamie, Nancy, Ellen, Karen, Vera and Tammy. Bottom row, Kirk, Michael, Jennifer and Mildred. A 1991 summer gathering at the Easton House, the house of Karen and Andrew.